Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Happy Tuesday, everybody, and happy first of the month. Happy April, Kalomina, which in Greek means have a good month. Kalomina, have a happy April to everybody. I hope your day, your week, and your new month are off to a fantastic start. Got a new day, which of course means a new NBA player prop video to share with you guys. But first, as always, people, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. It helps the channel grow, and it really does mean a ton to us. With a new day and a new month comes some new opportunities to go ahead and make some money. We have a massive, and I mean massive video today. I have 6 NBA player props in our single bet category. And then on top of that, we also have day 1 of our April ladder challenge. I have a 2-leg parlay to go ahead and share with you guys there. Honestly, I forgot that it was April 1st, and I was going through my my bets and going through the board, and then as I had all my picks selected, I'm like, wait a second, it's April 1st, we have our ladder challenge today, so I didn't want to cancel any of the picks I already had selected, so I'm like, you know what, we're just going to do them all. We're going to do them all. And so we have a massive video today with a total of 8 player props to hand out in today's video. And guys, the reason why I'm doing so much is because I love the picks I had. I love the board today. I woke up this morning, I saw the board, and sometimes you have those days. Have you ever had those days where the board, all the picks, the slate just kind of speaks to you? It's like, all right, I know what's going to happen today. I love what I'm seeing today. Today's NBA slate, it was like James Harden at a local strip club. It's like Zion Williamson when he sees an uneaten crawfish, and it's like Ben Simmons when he sees an opportunity to brick a layup. It just speaks to you, it calls to you. So really excited about today's picks. 6 single bets, a 2-leg parlay. But first, before we dive into today's picks, a quick little recap of how we did last night. And again, last night, guys, we had another one of those nights that we've been having really for the last week where it's not bad, it's just not good either. We went 2-2. We did hit on the Keontae George, which was a really nice read on my part, little pat on the shoulder there. We also have the John Morant player prop, over 34.5 points, rebounds, assists. That also hit. But unfortunately, Josh Giddey over 18.5 points and Luka Doncic over 29.5 points, both missed. Josh Giddey was at least in the vicinity. I think he finished with 15 points, but just 6 for 16. Didn't shoot the ball all that well. And then Luka finished with 20 points, also didn't shoot the ball all that well. So a couple misses there. We are now 180 and 151 on the year in our single bet category. So like I said, having a solid year overall. The last week or so, we've been for like 500, but those 2-2 nights where you lose a couple, like 0.3 units here or there, they do add up after a while. But those are yesterday's results. Today is a new day, and we have so many opportunities to go ahead and make money in today's slate. Guys, if you're watching today's video at this point, comment KALO, K-A-L-O. And if today's parlay hits, our 2-leg parlay, the first day of our ladder challenge, if it hits, one lucky commenter will win a free $25 Amazon gift card. So a little giveaway to kick off the month of April. So comment KALO, K-A-L-O, down below. Guys, without further ado, let's dive into our massive Tuesday NBA slate. Jumping right into the Outlier screen, guys. Shout out to Outlier, the best sports betting tool on the market. Everything you're going to see in today's video, all the data, all the graphics, everything, they're brought to you by Outlier. We do have a special link down below in the description, 7-day free trial to check it out for yourself. If you watch my videos, you know what Outlier can do for you. It's the best sports betting tool that money can buy, and you can try it out for yourself for 7 days free. Thousands of player props, thousands of bets to go ahead and look through from a data standpoint. Great tool to have. Go ahead and check that out down below in the comments. 7-day free trial. Thank you to Outlier for sponsoring today's video. All right, we're going to kick off with our ladder challenge parlay. So it's a 2-leg parlay. We are using DraftKings. At the time of recording, it's plus 120 over on DraftKings. So the first leg of our 2-leg parlay, we're targeting the, almost said Blue Jays, the Raptors-Bulls game, 8 p.m. tip-off. We're going Kobe White of the Chicago Bulls over 24.5 points plus assists. Again, we are using DraftKings for this parlay. Alternate line, minus 225 over on DraftKings. And of course, this being an alternate line, the data is going to be pretty solid. Kobe White was on a really good streak leading into yesterday's game against the Thunder, where he had a really small performance. Only played 23 minutes, only took 5 shots in that game. The Bulls obviously got blown out, but he had cashed that in 9 consecutive games going into last night's performance versus OKC, averaging 31 points plus assists per game over his last 10 games. That includes this one that obviously drags that average down. Go ahead and stretch the data out to the last 20 games. 75% hit rate, 15 of his last 20 games. He's cashed the over, averaging 29.3 points plus assists per game over his last 20 games. Now, if we go ahead and stretch the data out to the entire season view, it's actually not bad. 54% hit rate, 37 out of 68 games. He's cashed the over, averaging 24.66 points plus assists per game overall this season. So the recent data is really, really good. The overall data is pretty solid for the most part. From a head-to-head standpoint, 4 of his last 7 matchups against Toronto, he's cashed the over. That's a 57% hit rate, averaging 24.29 points plus assists per game across his last 7 matchups with Toronto. They played 3 times this year. He's cashed the over in 2 of those 3 games. The only miss, he missed it by 1 point/assist back on December 16th. So pretty good numbers against Toronto this year. And it makes sense. The Raptors overall this year, they're okay. If you do narrow the data down, though, to the last 7 games, the Raptors are bottom 10 in the NBA in points allowed to the shooting guard position. Kobe White's probably going to cover this mostly in points. He's going to get a couple assists here and there to push us over the line, like you see here, 24 points and 3 assists. But he is going to cover this obviously mostly in points, so that is the key fact in this one. So it's really solid player prop here. We also have some injuries on both sides that do help us out. Josh Giddey may not play. They could rest him potentially today. Although he's not listed on the injury report, it's a very good bet that he could rest, which obviously would only increase the number of touches and shots for Kobe White. So that's our first leg of our 2-leg parlay. All right, guys, and for our second leg of our 2-leg parlay, we're moving on to the Timberwolves-Nuggets game, 10 p.m. tip-off. We're going Anthony Edwards of the Minnesota Timberwolves over 24.5 points. We're getting this one from -185 over on DraftKings. Again, this is also an alternate line. Pretty good numbers, of course, being an alternate line for this one. Anthony Edwards, 7 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 26.9 points per game over his last 10 games. Go ahead and stretch the data out to the entire season view. You have a 58% hit rate on the year for Anthony Edwards, averaging 27.18 points per game this season. So like I said, pretty good numbers overall here for Ant. Really good matchup here versus Denver. The head-to-head data solid. 10 of his last 14 games, including playoffs against Denver, he's cashed the over. He's averaging 27.86 points per game over those last 14 matchups with Denver. That's a 71% hit rate. So really good numbers for Ant. A pretty large sample size here as well. And this is a very important game with major playoff implications. Minnesota right now are the 7th seed, or kind of the first playoff spot, I guess you could say, in the West. It's really tight, that 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. They're all very close with each other, so this game is really important. Right now, Minnesota 4 games back in Denver. They're not going to catch Denver, but right now, Minnesota trying to play themselves into just out of the play-on spot, I should say. And obviously, Memphis and Golden State play tonight. That's a massive game for their playoff implications, but also for Minnesota as well. One of those teams has to lose between Golden State and Memphis, so Minnesota winning this game is majorly important, major playoff implications. So Minnesota will definitely play hard in this one. Anthony Edwards is one of the best players in the NBA. I expect him to go ahead and put his team on his back. Versus shooting guards this year, Denver not very good overall, 25th in the NBA this year in points allowed to the shooting guard position, averaging 29.9 points per game allowed. And if you do narrow that down to the last month or so, it's still the same. They're still bottom 10 in the NBA. So it seems like a really good matchup, really good spot here for Anthony Edwards. Major playoff implications. He's got a pretty good track record, 3-0 so far this year. All 3 regular season matchups leading up to this game, 29, 34, and 29. So pretty good leg. That's our second leg of our 2-leg parlay. And jumping over to DraftKings, so our 2-leg parlay, again, Anthony Edwards 25 plus points or over 24.5 points. And Kobe White 25 plus points plus assists, or Kobe White over 24.5 points plus assists. You parlay both those together on DraftKings, get a parlay of plus 114 odds. So we're going to throw 1 unit on that parlay to kick off our April ladder challenge. And if we win this one, this profits from this parlay we throw it on tomorrow's parlay again if we win. So remember, comment KALO, K-A-L-O, and if this 2-leg parlay hits, one lucky commenter wins a free $25 Amazon gift card. All right, guys, that concludes the parlay portion of today's video. We're now moving into the single bet. So every bet from this point on, every player prop is a single bet. I am going to try to move a little quickly here because we do obviously have a lot of picks to get through. We're already 10 minutes into this video. So I'm going to fly through some of these. Where I need to go more in depth, I will. But again, you can do whatever you want with these, but these are meant to be single bets from this point on. That was a parlay, those first 2 picks. These are all meant to be single bets, but of course, do with them what you'd like. All right, our first single bet player prop in today's slate comes from the Suns-Bucks game, 7:30 p.m. tip-off. I actually have 2 player props coming from this game. Our first one, we have Devin Booker over 38.5 points plus rebounds plus assists, which we're getting for minus 105 odds over on BetMGM, available on multiple sports books for varying odds. And look, we're not going to spend too much time here because the data is not very good. Just 2 of his last 10 matchups, or excuse me, 2 of his last 10 games in general, he's cashed the over, averaging 33.8 points plus rebounds plus assists per game over his last 10 games. If you do go ahead and stretch the data out to the entire season view, just a 41% hit rate on this over. He is averaging 36.54 PRAs per game, so he's kind of close to that line. But obviously, you do see a sea of red here for the overall numbers. And from the head-to-head standpoint, he's failed to cash the over in each of his last 3 games, but all very narrow misses. You see right here, missed it by 1, missed it by 1, missed it by 2. So he's always around this line. He's averaging 37.67 PRAs per game against Milwaukee. Now, they did just play a week ago, a little over a week ago on March 24th. And again, he missed it by just 1. But the key thing here, and the reason why I love this player prop, is the fact that Kevin Durant is not playing tonight in Milwaukee versus shooting guards. Now, the overall numbers are okay, but if you do narrow the data down to the last 15 games or so, it's not very good. Bottom 10 in the NBA in points allowed to the shooting guard position, and honestly, still bottom half of the league in a lot of these categories over the last 15 games. So really good mark here for Devin Booker. Again, he's just barely missed it. The fact that he's that close gives me hope that he can cash this line. Look at the shooting numbers here. I mean, he shot 7 for 18, just 39% from the floor. He literally makes one more shot, which 8 for 18 is still not a great shooting night, but he makes one more shot and he goes ahead and cashes the over. He played almost 40 minutes. I expect him to play probably close to that, and Phoenix still kind of playing for that final play-in spot. They're still in it, so they're not out of it yet, but the Durant injury obviously puts a lot of stress and strain on Booker here. Again, not a lot of great positive data to go off of. It's really based off of the matchup with the Milwaukee defense that against guards has not been great, especially over the last month or so. And Devin Booker being the dog that he is, I'm hoping that with Durant out, he will step up, put the Suns on his back, and have a really big game. Again, he's been very close all these times he's played Milwaukee. All we need him to do is a little bit more, and he'll go ahead and cash the over. So I think it's worth playing this player prop, especially for minus 105 odds too. Very strong value here. All right, guys, on our second player prop from this game and our second single bet in today's slate, we're sticking with this game. We're going Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Bucks over 30.5 points. Very similar player prop and circumstance. We're getting this one for minus 110 over on BetMGM. You're going to hear me repeat a lot of the same stuff I just mentioned with the Booker prop. Now, the data overall is not that great. Just 4 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 27 points per game over his last 10 games. Go ahead and stretch the data out to the entire season view. You see just a 48% hit rate on this over for Giannis, averaging 30.18 points per game this year. So he's averaging over 30 points per game, but still a lot of red. And the majority of the time he is cashing the red, although 48% is not too bad. Now, unlike the Booker prop, there is some solid head-to-head data. Each of the last 2 times they faced off with Phoenix, he's cashed the over. Narrow cashes, but cashes nonetheless, averaging 32.5 points per game across those 2 matchups with Phoenix. They did play, again, a little over a week ago. He had 31 points in that game against Phoenix. And again, he actually shot pretty well, 12 for 19. But, there were obviously opportunities for him to do even more than that. But like Devin Booker, some big injury stuff here. No Damian Lillard in this game. And obviously they are still, I believe, without Bobby Portis, who's still serving his suspension. Let me just double check that here. Yes, Bobby Portis is still out. Now, he is listed as a game-time decision. Giannis is. I definitely think he's going to play here. Put a little filter here to show you guys what it looks like when both Damian Lillard and Bobby Portis, both those guys are out for Milwaukee. 4 of 7 games this year, Giannis has cashed that over, averaging 32.71 points per game. And even when he misses, like versus the Knicks, 30 points. Versus the Lakers, 28. Like, he hovers. The only game where he wasn't close was that Wizards game where he only had 18 points. But with Lillard and Portis both being out at the same time, you do see more responsibility thrust onto Giannis in terms of scoring. And obviously, Phoenix defensively, not a great team versus power forwards. 11th, okay. Centers, 28th. We know they're bad. Small forwards, they do rank okay. But overall, Phoenix is a bottom 10 team in the NBA in terms of points allowed. And Giannis, again, has had a pretty good track record versus them. They're not in as dire of a situation as Phoenix is from a playoff standpoint. They are currently 6th in the East, and they're probably going to stay there. But obviously, I don't think, do you really want to play the Knicks round 1, who play a ton of minutes, and then play Boston round 2, potentially? They have a chance to catch either Detroit or Indiana. I think the 4 or 5 spot you'd rather be in to at least get to the second round, and maybe you get Dame back. I don't know if you want to play the Knicks without Dame. I don't know how that would go for them. So there are still playoff implications in play here for Milwaukee. Obviously, a little bit more at stake for Phoenix, but I do think Giannis will have to play the Superman role, which I think he's pretty comfortable playing. All right, guys, moving on. Our third player prop in today's slate. Moving on to the Warriors-Grizzlies game. 8 p.m. tip-off. We're going Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors over 29.5 points plus assists. We're getting this one for minus 125 over on FanDuel. And I know you guys are probably saying, man, a lot of these player props, the data is not great, but it's all circumstance and situation. Yes, the data on this one is also not very good. Recent data, 4 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 28.6 points plus assists per game over his last 10 games. Go ahead and stretch the data out to the last 20 games. Just a 60% hit rate, 12 of his last 20 games. He's cashed the over, averaging 32.35 points plus assists per game over his last 20 games. And then if you do go ahead and stretch the data out to the season view, it's not terrible. I mean, 50% is not awful. It's not great either. But 31 out of 62 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 29.98 points plus assists per game overall this year. So again, not terrible circumstances, but not great ones either. From a head-to-head standpoint, that's really the kicker here. He's failed to cash the over in 4 straight games against Memphis. He's played them 2 times this year with some pretty bad results. The last time they played on December 19th, he had just 2 points and 1 assist. I believe he did get hurt in that game, if I'm not mistaken. No, he played 25 minutes almost. So I mean, maybe he still did get hurt, but 0 for 7 shooting. Just a really bad. They got blown out badly in that game. So yeah, like I said, the data is not great. I won't lie to you guys, and I'm pretty honest when it comes to the data if it's not great. Why I'm taking this player prop solely is it's Steph Curry, one of the greatest players to ever play in the history of the NBA. In a game that's totally crazily important, the Warriors right now are currently 6th in the West. They're half a game back against Memphis for the 5 seed. If they win this game, Golden State will jump Memphis and get into that 5 seed spot and continue their ascension into the NBA playoffs. I just think if you're Golden State, you don't want to hover around that play-in spot for too long. I think you want to get into the 5th spot or the 4th spot. I just think in a game like this, Curry's going to step up for the Warriors. There are obviously massive playoff implications at stake. Memphis overall defensively not great, 25th in points, 21st in assists. Versus point guards, a little bit better, although if you do narrow it down to the last 15 games, they do rank in the bottom half of the league in both those categories. So a little bit of a better matchup than the overall numbers would suggest. But even though the head-to-head data is not great, I just think Steph Curry is going to have a big game. I know there's not a lot of science to that, but the Memphis Grizzlies are all coming off the second night of a back-to-back. They just played Boston last night in a tough game. I do think that Curry in this spot with major implications for the playoffs, I think he will rise to the occasion and have a crazy game for Golden State. Again, I know there's not really data to support that, unfortunately, but I do love Steph Curry in this spot. Tail it if you'd like, fade it if you'd like. It's totally up to you. I just think in these spots, superstars like Curry are going to rise to the occasion. He's cashed in 50% of his games this year and 60% over his last 20. I do think it's a pretty decent matchup here. So Steph Curry over 29.5 points plus assists. That's our 3rd player prop in today's slate. All right, guys, next up, our 4th single bet in today's slate. We have Raptors Bulls going back to this game, 8 p.m. tip-off. We're going to manual quickly of the Raptors over 28.5 points plus rebounds plus assists, which we're getting for minus 120 odds over on DraftKings. The recent data is fantastic for quickly here. 8 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over, including 5 straight, averaging 31 PRAs per game over his last 10 games. The further out you stretch the data, the less impressive it becomes, but still a 50% hit rate this year. Granted, he's only played 30 games this season, but the data's okay here for quickly. Now, the head-to-head numbers, just one of his last 3 he's cashed it. However, the most recent matchup on February 28th, he did cash the over with 23 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. 50% this year. He's played him twice this season. Earlier on January 31st, just 14, 4, and 2. But obviously, their most recent matchup over a month ago had a really solid performance. Now, obviously, Chicago defensively a mess this year, 28th, 29th, and 28th respectively in points, rebounds, assists allowed overall. You do narrow it down to the point guard spot. They are bottom 5 in all 3 categories. And if you narrow it down to the last 7 games, they are still bottom 5 in all those categories, specifically in scoring. They're really, really bad. So quickly should have a really good game here. Obviously, from an injury standpoint, a lot of guys out for Toronto here. No Barrett, no Grady Dick, no Brandon Ingram. A lot of pieces missing for them. And Chicago, obviously, defensively, a bit of a nightmare. We go and show the numbers. No Brandon Ingram, no Grady Dick, and no RJ Barrett, just to show what the numbers look like this year. He's played 5 games with those guys, those 3 guys being out. A 100% hit rate, averaging 33.4 points, rebounds, assists per game over that 5-game stretch. So really good numbers here, really solid matchup. This is a nice player prop for me. I think this is a guy who's going to play minutes regardless if they're tanking or not. Minus 120 odds too. Pretty solid value. All right, guys, and wrapping things up, we have 2 player props coming from this Timberwolves-Nuggets game, 10 p.m. tip-off. We're going back to Anthony Edwards, who we had in our ladder challenge parlay. But in this one, we're going to go ahead and use him as a single bet, his straight line, over 31.5 points plus assists, which we're getting for minus 125 odds over on DraftKings. Now, the data is not as nice as it was when it was the alternate line, but I think a lot of the things we said in that original player prop do stand. I think the assists just kind of add a little extra to the player prop. Now, the recent data, 50% hit rate over his last 10 games, averaging 31.2 points plus assists per game. Over his last 20, 50%, averaging 31.1 points plus assists per game. And stretching the data out to the entire season view, just a 46% hit rate, averaging 31.75 points plus assists per game. So he is averaging consistently all year long, just around 31, 32 points plus assists per game. So he's averaging right around that line that we need him to be at. But obviously not the best data in the world. However, from a head-to-head standpoint, 7 of his last 14 matchups against Denver, he's cashed this over, averaging 33.36 points plus assists per game across those last 14 matchups, including playoffs. And again, like we mentioned with the points prop, it's the same here. All 3 matchups against Denver this season, he's cashed this over with flying colors. So yeah, overall, I wouldn't say the data is the best player prop of all time, but everything we said in that original points player prop still stands. From the playoff circumstances, obviously this being a big game, a little bit of a rivalry game between Nuggets and Timberwolves, with the playoff history between them this past year. Obviously, major seeding implications here with both these teams. So in the matchup, Denver defensively kind of a nightmare right now and versus shooting guards. Bottom 5 in both points and assists allowed, which is still consistent if you narrow it down to the last 15 games or so. I like the spot for Anthony Edwards over 31.5 points plus assists. And our final player prop in today's sticking with this game here, we got Dante DiVincenzo of the Timberwolves over 12.5 points plus rebounds, which we're getting for minus 140. This line actually just jumped massively in the last 30 minutes of recording. Minus 140 on DraftKings. I'm still going to go ahead and take it here because the numbers are really, really solid. This is the best data of any player prop we've seen today. This is a single bet too. He's cashed in 8 of his last 10 games, averaging 16 points plus rebounds per game over his last 10. Go ahead and search it out to the last 20 games, a 90% hit rate. 18 of his last 20 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 18.8 points plus rebounds per game over his last 20. And the overall season data, 68% hit rate, 38 out of 56 games. He's cashed the over, averaging 15.39 points plus rebounds per game overall this year. And guys, if that didn't help out, the head-to-head data. Each of his last 4 matchups with Denver, including both matchups as a member of the Timberwolves. Said it right. Long video, guys. Both of his matchups with the Timberwolves, he's cashed the over. So he's averaging 15.75 points plus rebounds per game. He cashed in both meetings last year when he's a member of the Knicks, and both meetings this year as a member of the Timberwolves, including a little over 2 weeks ago when he had 10 points and 6 rebounds against Denver. And again, like we mentioned earlier, the Denver Nuggets versus shooting guards, defensively not great, and again, narrowing the numbers down, it's still not great over the last 15 games or so. Like I said, this was actually minus 125. It jumped massively to minus 140 in the last 30 minutes. I still think it's worth the risk because it is a valuable player prop. The data is really good. And the fact that the odds are jumping means that we are onto something here. So that's our final player prop in today's slate. Whew, we did it, guys. 8 player props handed out to you guys. That is it for me today. Thank you very much, as always, for watching. One more time, guys, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. We'll be back tomorrow with another NBA player prop video. But until then, hope you're all winners. Enjoy your Tuesday. Kalomina. Hope we have a very profitable, happy, and successful month of April. Let's go ahead and make some money.